Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles market update. This is Gianni DePoci, your host. As I mentioned at the end of last week's column, we are switching these weekly market reviews to midweek. So they're going to be released now going forward on Wednesdays. And I think this gives us a good opportunity to review some of the midweek action and how it might shape up going into Friday instead of recapping what went on earlier in the week. But nonetheless, it's been an action-packed week in markets thus far already, seeing several stock indices test support during this intense geocosmic signature period rife with Uranus aspects. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Start off by looking at the Dow Jones. The reason I brought up Uranus to begin with is because Uranus, not only does it rule tech, but it's notorious for breaks of technical zones of support or resistance. So we see the Dow Jones coming down here, correcting over the last couple of weeks. And I think the zone that we need to watch from a technical standpoint, without getting into it too deeply, is this former resistance turn support zone of the head and shoulders pattern, the inverted head and shoulders pattern, that we were talking about several weeks ago. Now, if this is going to break, I think it could happen during this time. We started off the week with Sun conjunct retrograding Venus. Then we had Sun square Uranus on the 15th. Today, on the 16th, Mars is trining Uranus. So no shortage of Uranian activity as we look ahead into next week. On the 22nd, we have Venus square Jupiter, Mars opposite Pluto. And then we have Mercury going retrograde on the 23rd. So could we see a spike of fear, perhaps a false move lower in the next week? We know that Mercury retrograde is notorious for, miscommunications and false senses of direction. So we have to keep an eye on that. I want to look at the NASDAQ here before I round out the geocosmics for next week. We're also going to have Mars trine Pluto on the 24th, Sun opposite Saturn on the 27th, and then Mars will go into Libra on the 27th as well. But you can see the NASDAQ looking a little bit weaker from a technical standpoint here. It's not all that surprising given the rally that we've seen in crude oil and the slight uptick in perhaps the market's inflation expectations. But we know, as we look at a moment here, that crude oil has experienced a nice rally. It's been correcting so far this week, but tech seems to underperform and suffer quite a bit when the energy trade is doing well. It does not seem to like that high inflation expectation environment, but we'll have to keep an eye on this because I would really like to see the NASDAQ find a floor at some point close to these Uranus signatures. Let's go ahead and take a look at USO, the crude oil fund. We cover this in the monthly ETF report that will be published next Wednesday, the 23rd. Before that, we'll have the Shanghai report published on the 21st. But you can see here crude oil coming down from a new multi-month high that was registered last week. So higher highs and higher lows are something you see in a bull trend. But I think most importantly is that we saw what could turn out to be an intermediate term cycle low while Saturn was in the sign of Pisces. And I think going into year end, we could see some supply constraints unfold in the energy market that could be a major tailwind for the sector. Let's take a look at cryptocurrencies here, starting off with Bitcoin. It's been range bound, continues to be range bound. You can see, I'm going to go ahead and draw that. It's been basically within a $7,000 range going back to March. But over the last few months, it's been within a $4,000 range, more or less. So looking for a resolution to this tight trading range under these Uranus signatures, but it hasn't unfolded quite yet. We could see a false move lower, followed by a springboard higher in Bitcoin, but something to keep an eye on, especially as we head into next week's Mercury retrograde period. The odds of a false move are going to be much more elevated across all markets, not just crypto, during the Mercury retrograde period. Let's go ahead and take a look at GDX, the gold mining ETF. We did take out that low from June. So now it looks like we could see a test of those March lows. But I mentioned earlier in this video that we have Mars going into Libra at the end of August. So that's going to be a really important time for gold. And I'm not going to steal Ray's thunder here, but needless to say that gold has historically shown to complete important cycles, let's say, during Mars's transit through Libra, only to experience an even more important directional move under Mars in Scorpio. So right now, gold is on the defensive, no doubt, not liking this interest this rising interest rate environment as we look at TLT, another market covered in the monthly ETF report, trading at new multi-month lows, trading at the lowest level since November 2022 here. So this is definitely on the defensive. We're on the time band for a low of significance to unfold, and given the plethora of Saturn and Pluto signatures next week, I wouldn't be surprised to see a low of significance form and then a reversal to follow, because bonds are the foundation of the global economic system, and Saturn is a very foundational infrastructural type of planet, and then you have Pluto being the ruler of debt. So Saturn and Pluto are really the planets that we look at when it comes to debt markets. I want to take a look at housing. Home builders, I mean, look at the relative strength here. Coming into this year, there was so much skepticism and bearishness in the real estate sector, but the market's down multiple percentage points, and the home building ETF is down not even 3% from its multi-month high that was registered at the end of July. So this is a sector to keep an eye on, and I think it lends largely in part to the confusion we're seeing in real estate, which I think is due to Saturn going through Pisces. Saturn rules real estate. Pisces can lead to confusion, people expecting a bigger drop. There's a little bit of, I almost want to say, envy for a drop in prices. But as long as interest rates remain elevated, I think you're going to have a shortage of supply in the existing home market, which is a major tailwind on a relative basis for home builders, because the home supply has to come from somewhere. And then I also want to take a look at the healthcare sector, because Saturn in Pisces, I think this speaks a lot to that. We're going to talk about this more in next week's monthly ETF report. But a nice rebound here, formed a secondary lower high compared to the one on July 24th. But we have a Neptune aspect next week. Mars and Neptune are pretty important for this healthcare sector. Mars rules surgery and incisions, and Neptune obviously rules medicine. So we have an opposition between those two next week on the 22nd. So I think we have to keep an eye on healthcare for a potential reversal. So that's all that I wanted to cover with you today. Thank you so much for watching. It's always a pleasure to do these videos going forward. As I said, they will be conducted on Wednesdays instead of Fridays. So you can check out all of our works, our reports, our courses, our educational content at www.mmacycles.com. That's all for now. We'll see you same time, same place next week.